Okay, this lecture from Lesson 5 is about how to do Project 2. Project 2 is on this first page of Lesson 5 and it goes all the way down this side of the page, and then there's exercises here in the book that also will be done in class before we begin Project 2. Okay, you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 parts to this project. So I'm going to set this off now. Well, just briefly, we talked about these non-objective drawings over here in the first lecture. These non-objective drawings are similar to what we will be doing in here, but they're much simpler. They are simpler in that they do not have one component of this, which is actually part 1 here, and part 2, which is to use contour drawings of found objects. But these illustrate some other techniques that can be used in part 4. So let me show you what as much as I can get into the screen here. These are done on an 18 by 24. Let me grab something. These are done on an 18 by 24 sheet of paper. These can either be done in your sketchbook paper, or if your instructor prefers to give you a piece of high quality rag paper. Now, the end result here with the 1-inch border on this 18 by 24 is this real complicated but can be very interesting design. Now, this is really an abstract drawing because the design is made up of found objects, and the thing that happens in here is this spontaneous result of overlapping shapes, and how when we talked about implied line, you have lines that will be implied as they go through the piece. Now let me point out to you, here's an example of a spray bottle. Now if you look closely, you'll see that the spray bottle, this actual bottle, was used as a contour drawing right here. Here's the lever, and it goes around the top here. Here's the screw-on part, and then this whole large part down here is actually this part of the bottle. And you say, well, that's very big. Well, yes, part of the idea is to do the contour drawings of some of these things, and then you're going to enlarge some and reduce some. So we have a lot of goals here that we're looking at, and one of them is to learn about how you can pick up the essence of an object. If you notice, this edge of this bottle here actually is defined by implied line by just the opposite values of shapes. And these kinds of things are desirable when building compositions, so that you don't really give the viewer all very simple information, and you let the viewer put things together. So those kinds of designs are desirable in drawing and in learning how to make artwork. So again, here's another piece. Here's a jar right here. And you see sometimes these things can be made to be very obvious, and sometimes you have to look for them. And that's part of the other, I guess, intriguing part of this type of project. So the end result here would look something like this. So now we're going to take these parts one at a time to see how we come to something like this. So let's begin with part 1. And part 1 says, draw 4 7 by 9 rectangles on a sheet of 18 by 24 drawing paper. Select 4 objects in the class and draw the contour of each one. Draw 1 object in each rectangle. These drawings must be approved before you proceed to part 2. One thing I'll say about all these parts is that they will be done in sequence. The idea here is that you make a spontaneous association to the final product as you go through the entire process. You don't want to know everything you want to do before you're finished. Then you're just copying an idea, even if it's your idea. You want some spontaneous input by things that you have done. So that's why a lot of these projects that I have in this class are done sequentially and they have parts and all the parts are related, but you don't know what the next part is going to actually do in your final product until you get there. Okay, so this is basically the layout of this 9 by 7 by 9 rectangles on a sheet of 18 by 24 paper. Now, this is to scale, but it's smaller, so I could fit it into this framework here. But basically the 9 inches this way, if you're looking at your paper horizontally, you could look at your paper vertically if you wanted. I just couldn't fit it in the frame that way, so I drew it this way. Now you have, if you take a piece of your, you'll be given a piece of newsprint, or you can use a piece of your sketchbook pad, depending on whatever your instructor thinks is going to be better for you to use. This is a piece of sketchbook paper right out of your sketchbook, although it's smaller, so I can fit it in the frame. But the dimensions are the same. 24 inches this way, so if you have 9 and 9 here is 18, 2 inches is 20, 2 inches on each end makes 24. So this adds up to 24, which is the length of your paper. This height should be 18. If you have 7, and 7 is 14, 2 is 16, 17, 18. So you have a 1-inch border on the long side, a 2-inch border on each end, and 2 inches between each rectangle. Each rectangle is 7 by 9 inches. Now, it's really important in drawing to learn how to follow directions, learn how to measure, and learn how to make things like this. And this is not complicated, and this is a really important part of your training. So this is the matrix, and you can look at this as many times as you need to in order to, if you haven't written these measurements down. Okay, now what are we putting in here? Well, I'm going to go back to what I did at the last lecture. Remember when I drew this and I was talking about this one is from closure. Remember when I said when they touch opposite borders, then they form closure? When you do your contour drawings, they will need to touch opposite borders. The reason for that is I want all of your drawings, your contour drawings, to be 9 inches long and or 7 inches wide, depending on how you fit them in the rectangle. Now, this was that image. Actually, it was like this. Well, this one doesn't have the loop on it, so it must have been the other one, but that's all right. Now, what I want to say about that is, now look at this one that I drew. I'm going to put this one right next to it. Now, what you'll notice here is that, well, maybe it'll fit better this way. You say, well, what happened to the space in here and why does this not look like that one? Well, one of the things when you do contour drawing is you're going to hold the piece in your hand and look at it, because not all the pieces that you're looking at are going to fit into this box if you wanted to trace it. This is not 9 inches long, so you have to make it bigger. So what you're doing is looking at it and drawing it. So then I say, well, how are you going to look at it? This is considered a flat profile view. But if I was to turn it like this, the way that you see it now, that is how I drew it on here. And you'll notice that when I draw that, a lot of the contour does not show up in the same way as it did here. So this is not as interesting as this one because it does not have the detail. So when you pick an object and how you look at the object is very important in part 1 when you draw these, because you need to be able to identify what the piece is. It would be hard, most people can tell this is probably a hand paper punch. This would be difficult to identify. And when you have objects in a project like this, then, you know, for the viewer to say, oh, maybe that looks like, maybe that's a paper punch, or maybe that's a pair of scissors, and that's, you know, those kind of little interest things that you put into your drawings believe it or not, add to the complexity and the success of the piece. So you need to be very careful how you look at the piece when you're doing it. Okay, well that's the end of the part one. So we'll be doing these in class today. I have a large amount of things for you to choose from. Obviously, you'll still have a couple of these, and we have a whole box for you to look at. So you'll have time to do those, and we'll be doing that in class today. Part two is about, is taking those pieces, and I'm going to put up a little layout I did here. You're drawing a 2-inch border on a sheet of 18 by 24 drawing paper. Redraw your contour drawings from part one in the picture plane. Choose one to be the smallest, which is 50%, one to be the largest, which is twice as big as your original, and one to remain at 100%. And you're going to be tracing them onto another piece of paper. So when you have this, let me grab this. You'll be able to trace one of these right away. The other two you have to either enlarge or reduce. And you say, well, how am I going to do that? I'm going to do that. This is our goal. We now want to get from this to 3 sizes. That's the first thing. So what I have here is a very simple enlargement layout. All artists use this. This is a very common one. It is based on a diagonal line through the corners. Now, you have one of these on page 47 of your workbook. Now, if your workbook doesn't happen to have a page number on it, I would say that it's, let me look here real quick. Well, I think it's in lesson 9. Okay, so if we look at this original, this is a 9 by 7, the one that's white, and it includes this area in here. So if you took one of these from here, okay, and you use a ruler, which is one time you get to use a ruler, and you line it up between these 2 corners and draw a line just way out into the edge of your paper like that. Okay, now you can do another 7 by 9 on a clean sheet of paper because you'll have to. Okay, that's the first thing you'll do, is draw another 7 by 9 on another sheet of paper, draw a line through here like that. Then when you do that, you can follow along with your ruler straight out to here. All you have to do is make the larger corner touch the diagonal line. So if you measure this, and this is 9 inches, all you have to do is double it to 18. And I put the 18 up here as a measurement. So all you have to do is, once you draw the 7 by 9, you draw a twice as big line out here, which would make it 18 inches long. And you draw the diagonal through the 2 corners way out as far as you can. Then all you need is a perpendicular line from here down to the 18. And so you don't know where it's going to hit here. So this line has to be straight or parallel with the original. So parallel with the original, you could measure this distance. You can't be too crooked because when it goes up here from this 18 down here, it's got to intersect this diagonal here. It's going to hit it somewhere if it starts here at 18. But if it's crooked, it could end up over here. So you just want to get it as straight as you can. Then this is simply goes from here all the way over, and then you have to extend this line up till they meet. This will give you an exact 200%, they call that, proportional enlargement of this rectangle here, up to here. Now you have to redraw your drawing as accurately as you can inside the larger shape. And so we had this. And you go, well, how am I going to do that? One way you can do that is to divide this in half and in half again. Now, if you took the larger one and divided it in half, and that's going to go down this line, and half of this is going to be here. So now I know that this point is right here at this intersection, and I know that this clamp part here, these are even on each side. So you see, as you divide up your larger spaces, it's easier for you to duplicate an enlargement of an object. Now, you don't have to be really super accurate with the width of it and stuff, but what you should not do is do not round off edges. Like, for instance, this edge here, you wouldn't want to redraw that just like this, because, you know what I mean, you want to make sure that you put as much detail in there as possible, and as you redraw it, don't minimize the detail and make it rounded, because then you won't be able to identify the piece very well. And as you retrace and retrace this a couple times, you can lose detail very easily, which is an important lesson to learn. The reduction is very simple. It just goes backwards. So you had a 9x7 rectangle. All you do is follow down here and just get your ruler. Again, this is one time you can use a ruler. And half of 9 is 4.5 inches. So you know that it's going to be right here, because you measured 4.5 this way. So wherever 4.5 inches meets this diagonal line, that's going to be it. So that's fine. Just draw a line there and then go straight down. Or you could use 3.5, which is half of 7. 50% of the original is half. 200% of the original is twice the size. So these are very easy conversions. You only have to divide by 2 or multiply by 2. Okay? So once you get these shapes on another piece of paper, then you can select which pieces you want to enlarge or reduce. Now, if you look at this one, what I did was I used the spray bottle, and I used the paper punch, and I used a light bulb. Now, the light bulb